Bugatti is blowing up my phone. I've had multiple meetings with the CEO of Bugatti. I've had multiple meetings with the director of Bugatti America.
That's simply not true. All the prices you hear about Bugatti service and so on, it's not the truth.
For weeks, the most powerful man in the supercar world looked like the hero of this story, calm and generous and impossible to argue with. Then Alex Gonzalez stared into a camera and said one single word about Mate Rimac that turned every comment section against him overnight. He did not shout, and he did not threaten. He called the boss of Bugatti disingenuous, and the entire industry stopped to listen. The call-out that stopped everyone cold. Alex Gonzalez has built his whole name online by being loud and being right at the same time. The kind of Forex trader who films himself on a phone and somehow turns it into millions of followers. So when he finally aimed both barrels at Mate Rimac, the man who runs Bugatti, people leaned in close. He did not scream, and he did not threaten. He looked into the camera and called the most respected boss in the supercar business something that stung far worse than any insult ever could. He called him disingenuous. That one word did all the damage. Rimac had just dropped a video explaining, in a calm and friendly voice, exactly why Alex could not fix his wrecked Bugatti on his own terms, and that video raced past 6 million views in only a few days. Most of the comments treated Rimac like the only reasonable adult in the room. Then Alex stepped in and flipped the entire mood on its head. He said the safety talk was a costume, and that the real word nobody inside Bugatti wanted to say out loud was control. Here is where it gets personal for everyone watching, because we have all stood on the wrong side of that exact feeling. You buy something, you pay in full, the thing is legally yours, and then a stranger behind a desk in another country decides you are not allowed to touch it. That is the nerve Alex pressed hard. He was not arguing about gearboxes anymore. He was arguing about the quiet lie hidden inside the word ownership. What made it land so heavily was the timing. For weeks, the story had been drifting toward a happy ending, with Rimac playing the cool boss and Alex playing the grateful owner who got rescued. Alex burned that ending down on purpose, and he told his audience the rescue was never really a rescue at all. The thing that turned him from grateful to furious was buried inside that video. In one specific claim, his own team had already torn apart on camera. The coolest CEO speaks back. Mate Rimac is not your normal car executive, and that is the whole reason his answer carried so much weight. He built his first electric car in a garage as a kid, turned a homemade project into a company that now sells its technology to Porsche and Koenigsegg, and somewhere along the way he became known as the most down-to-earth boss in an industry stuffed with cold suits. When a man with that reputation takes the time to answer one single owner on the internet, the world tends to stop and listen. His message was patient, and it was clever. He told everyone that most of the terrifying numbers floating around about Bugatti repairs were simply not true. He pushed back on the rumor that a set of headlights costs as much as a house, putting the real figure far below the wild claims people kept repeating. He insisted this was never about squeezing anyone, and that the company genuinely wanted the car saved and back on the road where it belonged. Then he reached the part that mattered most to him. He said the crash had shattered the gearbox housing and damaged the carbon tub that the whole car is built around, and that only a small handful of trained people on Earth know how to separate that rear section from the body safely. To him, this was not snobbery, it was simple physics. He spoke about a machine that should still be driving 50 or even 100 years from now, and a company that feels responsible for keeping it breathing that long. He even pulled the curtain back a little to prove it. He described testing a brand new Bugatti in brutal cold, around 20 degrees below zero, where the leather on the dashboard stiffened so badly it could actually change the way an airbag fired. That, he said, is why you cannot just swap parts and hope for the best. because the real danger hides in the tiny details no rebuild clip will ever bother showing you. For a moment, it worked beautifully. The car got quietly taken off the blacklist, and the repair quote that once sat near $1.75 million dropped to well under $700,000. On paper, it looked like a company bending over backwards for a customer it never had to help. The trouble was that one of those calm reassurances had a hole in it, and Alex and his rebuilder had already found that hole by reading a few tiny numbers stamped onto the parts themselves. The secret hidden inside the airbags. The entire spell of a Bugatti rests on one single idea, which is that everything inside it was made just for you, by hand, at a level no ordinary car could ever come close to touching. That idea is what justifies the eye-watering price, and that idea is exactly what cracked apart the moment Matt Armstrong started reading part numbers out loud. When his team pulled the airbags to rebuild the interior, they did what any sharp mechanic does, and they looked the codes up. What they found dropped jaws. The knee airbag and the front passenger airbag carried the same part numbers as an Audi A3, a car you could buy used for the price of a decent watch. The airbag tucked into the steering wheel matched one straight out of an Aston Martin DB11. The very pieces Bugatti framed as untouchable were quietly sitting inside cars worth a sliver of the price. Be honest with yourself for a second, because this is the part that gets under your skin. You always half suspected that some of the magic in these ultra-expensive machines was a story being sold to you. And here was hard proof printed right onto the components. The exclusivity was real in some places and completely borrowed in others. The curtain did not just slip, it got yanked all the way down to the floor. Matt never even presented it as a scandal, and that calm honesty is what made it hit harder. He explained that big car groups share parts across their brands all the time, that Bugatti itself buys its airbags from inside the Volkswagen family, rather than inventing them from scratch, and that using the correct matching part was the smartest move on the table, not some reckless shortcut. He said plainly that as many airbags as he had replaced over the years, this was as safe as it was ever going to get. So when Rimac warned the world that you could not simply swap parts, the audience already had a counterpunch loaded. The cold weather leather story sounded serious enough, but viewers had just learned that a Bugatti and a used Audi were sharing the very same airbag, and that single fact changed how every careful warning landed afterward. None of this would have ever reached a camera, though, if Alex had behaved like a normal owner. Everything that followed traces back to one short and reckless message he fired off with a stopwatch in his hand. The 24-hour ultimatum. Back in November of last year, Alex Gonzalez did something no public relations expert on Earth would ever sign off on. He posted a message aimed straight at one of the oldest and proudest names in all of motoring, and he handed them a deadline, like a man counting down out loud. He wrote that Bugatti had 24 hours to take his car off the blacklist, or he and his team would start three-dimensional printing every single part they needed by themselves. It sounded completely insane, and in a way, that was the whole point. One guy with a phone was telling a brand that builds rolling engineering art that he would simply manufacture his own replacement pieces in a garage if they kept blocking him. Most companies would have scrolled past it. A legal team might have mailed a cold and quiet letter. What actually happened belongs in a film. Mate Rimac himself slid into the messages. The note Alex later showed the world opened with a line people still quote today. "Hey man, Bugatti CEO here." The boss of the entire operation, a man building hypercars worth fortunes, was personally typing to a furious trader on a phone screen. He explained that you genuinely cannot print a gearbox or a carbon tub, that lights and panels do not work that way either, and that he wanted to find the cheapest honest road back to a working car. For one warm heartbeat, the whole thing softened. Here was the most powerful man in the room, choosing a friendly chat over a courtroom. The car got unblocked. The two sides started talking about a sensible plan, and the story looked like it was gliding toward the kind of ending where everyone shakes hands. Then Alex admitted something that reframed the entire moment. He confessed the ultimatum had partly been trolling, a deliberate poke designed to drag out a reaction, and it had worked far better than he ever dreamed. But getting that reply was never really the goal, because once the cameras were rolling and the CEO was watching, Alex started pressing a much harder question about why his fully paid-for car had been locked away in the first place. To understand why Bugatti slammed that door so violently, you have to rewind to the night it all broke, when $4 million of machinery met the back of a truck on a Miami street. The car they wanted to stay broken. The Chiron Purse Sport is not a normal Bugatti, and that is a huge part of why this story carries the weight it does. Only 60 of them were ever made. It runs a monstrous 16-cylinder engine, shorter gearing that makes it lunge like a startled animal, and a huge fixed wing bolted across the back. It is the kind of object collectors guard like treasure, and Alex owned one wrapped in a custom purple that turned every head it rolled past. Then it was gone in a single instant. The car went nose first into the back of a small truck on a Miami road, and the front end folded like paper. The airbags fired. The damage pushed deep into areas that even seasoned mechanics describe with a worried breath. Insurance looked it over, called it a total loss, paid Alex out, and shipped the wreck to a public salvage auction where anyone with money could throw down a bid. This is the moment that separates Alex from nearly everyone who has ever totaled a car. He bought it back. He sat in that auction and put down a bid north of $1.5 million, and once the fees were counted, the wreck had cost him close to $2 million all over again. People were certain he had lost his mind, while he was certain he was about to pull off something nobody ever had. Bugatti saw it completely differently. A technician flew in from France, studied the car, and the verdict came down like a hammer. The total loss was confirmed, and the car's identity number was locked inside Bugatti's worldwide system. From that second forward, not one official dealer anywhere on the planet could order even a single part for it. The machine was, in the company's eyes, finished forever. A closed chapter they fully intended to keep closed. The numbers attached to fixing it were built to crush any hope. The early estimate climbed toward $1.75 million. A pair of headlights alone was priced like a small luxury car. Single body panels wore six-figure tags. Every line on that quote seemed designed to whisper the same thing, which was that this car was never meant to live again outside the factory walls. Most people would have read that message, felt the full weight of it, and walked away to count their insurance money in peace. Alex did the exact opposite. He reached for his phone and called the one man on Earth famous for reviving the cars everybody else swears are gone for good. The man who builds the impossible. Matt Armstrong did not come from family money or some polished engineering school. He came from BMX bikes and a stubborn streak a mile wide, and he grew an audience of millions by buying broken supercars and dragging them back to life on camera. Wrecked Lamborghinis, smashed Ferraris, a McLaren most shops would have crushed for scrap. He had even tangled with Bugatti once before over a Veyron, when the company quoted him a small fortune for a single part, and he decided to make his own instead. So this fight was already personal long before Alex ever called.
Yeah, I don't know how to fix this car. You think you could come down and fix it?
I think we can come out and fix it. It's going to cost. It's going to be expensive.
When the two of them teamed up, the rebuild stopped being a simple repair job and became a public test of everything Bugatti had sworn was impossible. The very first promise they shattered was the biggest one of all, the claim that only a tiny circle of special people on Earth could split that car into two pieces. They split it anyway. The team discovered the back of the car was far more bolted together than the legend ever suggested, with covers held on by a couple of fasteners and sections that came apart through patience rather than wizardry. They found a broken aluminum mount and an engine block that had survived completely intact. They separated the transmission from the engine, the precise job supposed to demand a secret society of technicians, and they did it in a workshop in Miami. Then came the long and beautiful grind. A fabricator named Bob spent more than 60 hours by hand building a new front crash bar with every correct mounting point. The team built radiators from scratch, since the car hides nearly 10 of them. They reconnected the fuel, the coolant, the wiring, the entire brain of the machine. And then they did the thing the whole internet had been holding its breath for. They rejoined the two halves with titanium bolts, turned the key, and that giant 16-cylinder engine roared back to life for the first time since the crash. A short while later, the purple monster rolled under its own power again. No windscreen yet, raw and unfinished, but truly moving. A car Bugatti had buried on paper was driving down a road. For Alex and Matt, that one clip was worth more than any apology the company could ever offer. That drive did something none of them said out loud. Because the second those wheels turned, it forced open a question the entire luxury world has been desperate to keep shut, about what truly happens to your power once the camera starts rolling. What you really own. Strip away the engines and the price tags, and this whole saga comes down to one uncomfortable truth that touches anyone who has ever bought something expensive. You can pay every penny, hold the title in your own hand, and still find out that the company behind the product believes it owns a piece of your purchase forever. That is the wall Alex slammed into at full speed, and that is why so many people who will never sit in a Bugatti still felt his fight in their chest. He was not even the first. A British creator named Mark McCann bought a Bugatti Veyron and learned its gearbox was sealed shut. The kind of part the company will only replace for a fortune rather than let anyone simply repair. The same wall, the same locked door, the same quiet message that your money buys the car, but never the keys to its secrets. Story after story keeps pointing at the very same place, and the people watching are finally connecting the dots. What changed everything this time was the audience. For decades, the manufacturer set the rules, and the owner accepted them in private, because there was nowhere to go and nobody to tell. A single unhappy customer was just a whisper that nobody had to hear. That arrangement is over now, and it is not crawling back, because a creator with millions of followers can turn a private no into a public storm before morning. That is the deeper reason this cut so deep, and the reason Rimac, as sharp as he is, chose a friendly message instead of a lawyer. He could feel the old power slipping through his fingers. He answered one single owner because ignoring that owner was no longer safe. And even with all his charm, he could not fully close the gap between the warm things he said and the cold things his company had already done. So when Alex called him disingenuous, he was never really attacking one man at all. He was naming the exact moment the balance tipped. The moment a guy with a phone and a wrecked car proved he could stand toe-to-toe with a 100-year-old empire and refused to blink. The damaged Bugatti was never the real story. The shift in who holds the power was the whole story. So where do you really stand on this one? Is Bugatti protecting something genuinely worth protecting, or holding paying owners hostage with parts they flat out refuse to sell? Drop your honest take in the comments below.